Hello, we are transmitting to you from our present, which we can only assume is your distant past, the turbulent time that was the early 21st century. Fearing the great cataclysm that will surely befall our civilization, we began this monumental reference of strange and obscure human knowledge. These recordings represent our attempt to compile and preserve wonders and esoterica that would otherwise be lost. Whether you're listening from an advanced civilization or have just reinvented the technology to decrypt our transmissions, this is our legacy to you. This is our time capsule. This is the Omnibus.
You have accessed entry 171.JE0814. Certificate number 34343. The Cabinet of Doom.
In 5, 4...
Initiating star drive in 5.
Hi, Bob.
Hey, John. How are you?
Good. Welcome to the show.
It's a pleasure to be here.
We appreciate you coming on. For listeners who are wondering how it is that Bob Crawford, bass player of the Avett Brothers, is reporting to us from a hotel room with a moon on the wall. We should just say that you and I had a book event for your new book about John Quincy Adams, where we met at Third Place Books and had a very convivial hour talking about the American presidency.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. Every one of those events I did on that tour were very different, and the interviewers always took the conversation in a different direction. And yours was really great. It was a lot of fun. Yeah, and I definitely feel like we became fast friends.
Do you feel like the people that come out? I mean, how many of them were people you knew already, and how many were like me, just when we sat backstage and tried to figure out how I was asked to do it, neither of us could really figure out where that had come
no
from.
Idea.
Some magical connection. Were most of them like that, or did you know some of the people?
Some of them were friends, like historians and political journalists, and so Alexis Coe, who's a great historian, she wrote that great book about George Washington, You Never Forget Your First, and then I didn't know Jennifer Moore up in Boston from WGBH, the great NPR affiliate up there. But she was incredible. And then Kurt Graham was at the Church of the Presidents, which is where John Quincy Adams and John Adams and their wives are interred.
All right.
In the crypt, and that was an incredible event. And then Sean Willentz in Princeton, New Jersey, and Sean is a hero of mine as far as historians go. His book, The Rise of American Democracy, Jefferson to Lincoln, set me on the path I'm on today, and inspired my book about John Quincy Adams, From President to Political Maverick. And then Robert Costa in D.C., and Robert Costa, people know, he's used to be with the Washington Post. He's currently with CBS, and he wrote a great book with alongside Bob Woodward about the peril about the 2020 election. But he and I are good buddies. And then I was out in San Francisco with Megan Gorman, who wrote the book All the President's Money. Like, to be a historian, she's a financial person. She worked at Goldman Sachs, but she's also historically minded and focused. So she wrote this incredible book I recommend to everyone, where she goes through all the president's financial records. And through that kind of tells a story about them. We might not, we won't expect. There are some presidents we don't rank very high, but when you get into their financial records and see what they were involved with and how they spent their money and how they made their money, they seem a lot more respectable.
Right.
Warren G. Harding, I'm looking at you.
I feel like, oh, wow, that's interesting.
It is.
Like a revisionism on Harding. But we're here to talk about some 19th century politics, which is one of the Omnibus's favorite general kind of themes.
Yeah, accidents of history, right?
I was going to say that you're a lay historian, but you're a professional historian now.
I guess so. I took a check for doing history one time, so I guess that makes me a professional.
Well, yeah, and you have an advanced degree in history, and you're a published historian. So you're no longer a lay historian as I am.
I've become the man.
Yeah,
I'm the man
right.
now.
But when you set out to write about John Quincy Adams, I mean, I understand the appeal. You've read some books about the time and the way he stands athwart two periods in history, and I think especially the fact that we don't think of him as one of the great presidents, but as you outline, really one of the great Americans, really stood at the crossroads. But you must get a lot of kind of head scratching, like, why aren't you just laying on a couch, like, sniffing laudanum out of a handkerchief instead of?
I wish those days are so over for me. I'm 55 and I can't lay on the couch anymore. Even when the rare moment that I have that I can actually get away with that, I am just so in not fight or flight mode, but I am always on the verge of, like, cortisol in my body must be just very, really high, because I can't sit still. I just can't do it. And I had a youth where I did a lot of sitting still. I did a lot of couch laying in my teens and 20s. But, for various reasons, the band won. The situation at home where I'm a parent to a 14-year-old boy and a 16-year-old disabled special needs child. There's just, rest is not acceptable, although needed, but not acceptable. And then to cope and to, you need something other than music, and you need to be able to put aside the personal struggles for a time to fill your cup. You got to keep filling your cup up so you can handle the personal stuff. And that has been history for me. So I always knew this, because I always, like, one of my things I say is, like, history. People are like, oh, history repeats. Those who don't learn doomed to repeat it, or history doesn't repeat, it rhymes, which is attributed to Twain. I think that it's not history repeating, it's people just being the same. People were the same people. Like, people don't change. And so the deeper I get into this, the more I realize that I'm studying human nature. History is the study of the human condition. I love to bring out the humanness in history, in these historical situations, and bring out the human factor of it all. Like, things that happened, and there's these people there. We are them, they are us. I know that's not grammatically correct way to say that, as I was told when I wrote the book and put that in there. But I think sometimes you get away with it and say, no, but the meaning is, this is right. We are them and they are us.
All right. So where are we? Set the scene for us.
Well, it's 1840, and the nation has previously been under 12 years of democratic rule. But it's
not the Democratic Party we know.
No. Yes, it is. It is that party, but it's not the idea, not the ideology. That party has changed clothes a few times between then and now. Yeah. Right. But it's a party that is kind of been ruled by enslavers. But it is, when Van Buren, who was the architect of this party, he said he wanted to unite essentially the pro-slavery elements of the South with the plain Republicans of the North, with men who are okay with slavery. They don't love it, but okay. We're united by ideology rather than the slave issue.
Now, they're okay with it because they financially benefit from it, or they're okay with it because they just don't see how the humanity of Africans is relevant to the business of the day?
Yes, and do not disrupt the status quo.
I see.
The worst thing for business is disrupting the status quo. And so slavery must continue. We're not going to hold a grudge against our fellow Democrats from Alabama or Louisiana or, South Carolina just because they hold property in human beings.
I see.
So Andrew Jackson, which I think many of your listeners know, was a very powerful president at a time when the Article 2 branch of the Constitution, the executive branch, was not considered the dominant branch. It was Article 2, after all. The legislative branch, the Congress, the Senate, they were the more powerful branch in the early part of the Republic. But Jackson, when he swept into office here on this populist wave, and it was a matter of more white men were getting the right to vote from around the country, many in the West and the South, and they were tired of the establishment. And so they swept the establishment powers out of office, which John Quincy Adams was actually at the time. He was the establishment. He gets swept out by Jackson. And Jackson comes in and he is just breaking stuff, right? And his biggest thing was the bank. There was a second bank in the United States. And he said that bank is the seat of corruption in this country. And he has a famous quote, I will destroy the bank or it will destroy me, something like that. Well, he destroys the bank, second bank in the United States. And the economy of the nation goes to crap. And most of this falls on the shoulders of his successor, who was Martin Van Buren. And so Van Buren in 1836 is president, nation falls into a deep depression, and they go through several, there's a couple recessions or depressions between 1836 and 1839. Van Buren loses re-election to a Whig candidate. And so the two-party system, it was the Democrats and the Whigs. The Whigs were also North and South, but they were a coalition of anti-Jacksonian men. And
now, was any of his anti-bank rhetoric? Was there a anti-Semitic angle to it, or an anti-Mason angle, or what was what was Jackson's problem with the Bank of the United States?
I think it was a little personal, because when he was a younger man and had all these land investments in Tennessee, he had money in a bank and he got in big trouble. He had a lot of financial issues, and I think he always blamed the banks for his.
Oh, he got repossessed and he was mad and it wasn't his fault, huh?
It's funny. You don't think of a president holding grudges, but Jackson did, which is really unique in American history.
Yeah, although around here, there are lots of people that hold grudges against banks, but they don't have the power to dissolve the Bank of the United States.
The thing about the Bank of the United States was it stabilized the economy. So what you had, if you didn't have the Bank of the United States, so when Jackson gets rid of the bank, destroys the bank, he vetoes the rechartering of the bank. The federal government takes all the money that was in that bank and gives it to these little banks and states, these pet banks.
Is that a good
actually, he creates
theory?
more shenanigans.
Wait, isn't this the plot of Alexander Hamilton? Isn't this the plot of this was Hamilton's bank, right?
Hamilton started, he did the first bank, and then the charter expired. Then Madison did the second bank because we were at war and we needed the bank. Madison had an evolution on the bank issue.
Was there any logic to sending the money out to the small banks that would make sense? Is there an economic theory?
Taking it out of the power of a centralized center of the government, spreading it around the country.
Right.
Making people in the West, have more access to capital, people in the South, supposedly.
I see.
So the Whigs but Jackson did something else when he was president that caused him to have some enemies. And this is actually something where myself personally, I agree with Jackson on this issue, as many I think in this country would. South Carolina, there was something called the tariff. And the tariff was a high tariff on foreign goods coming into the country. And the idea was to promote American manufacturing.
We're talking about textiles and...
Textiles. But really, the manufacturers at this time are all in the North.
Right.
And so there's a high tariff, and the people in the South hate it because they're exporting their goods. They're exporting their cotton. And that hurts them. If we're putting a tariff on goods coming in, there's retributive tariffs on stuff coming out of this country and going to other places. So South Carolina says, we looked at this Constitution, and we don't think we need to, if there's a federal law we don't like, we can nullify it. We don't need to obey it. And we don't like this tariff, so we're not going to pay the tariff. And Jackson says, oh, yes, you are. And he threatens to march the military into South Carolina when they refuse to pay the tariff. So there's this standoff. So there are this breed of the breed of South Carolinians called nullifiers. So Jackson wins that standoff. But when 1840 comes and this party, the Whig Party, they put forward their first presidential candidate, the Whigs are a coalition of the nullifiers, the pro-bank Henry Clay people. You mentioned the anti-Masons. We can get into anti-Masons if you want. We love conspiracy theories around here. They're the old anti-Masons. So it's kind of a coalition of people that would not get along with each other in any other context than they hated Andrew Jackson.
Yeah, strange bedfellows.
Strange bedfellows. So if you have this coalition of strange bedfellows, it's kind of hard to pick a presidential candidate, somebody to run for president, right?
Right.
Well, they agreed on it. They found this guy, William Henry Harrison. He was a famous Indian fighter. We were talking about this earlier. He killed Tecumseh at the Battle of Tippecanoe. And
that's right.
That was during the War of 1812. And he's kind of like, America, we love our war heroes. We love our George Washingtons. Andrew Jackson was elected. He created his folk hero status from being a war hero, the Battle of New Orleans. And so they tried to run the Whigs. They're like, oh, you got a war hero. Well, we got a war hero. We got this guy, Henry Harrison, which, he's kind of a B-list war hero as war heroes go. And he's kind of older. He's an older guy. I think he's in his 60s. But he runs and they win. But, he runs. And so they're like, we need to balance out the ticket because we got this like fragile coalition.
And he's a Western guy too, right? And
Ohio, that's right.
It always cracks me up when you're in Indiana and all the battlefield sites are like the wars of the West. Here we are all the way in Indiana. Yeah,
it's Indian Native American wars is what basically it was like moving a lot of these Native Americans off their land. But so they got to pick a vice presidential candidate. Nobody wants the gig. The vice presidency is not seen, like I think John Adams said it was the worst position you could have in government. It was like useless. It's completely useless.
Yeah, your book points out that the Secretary of the State was the heir apparent to the presidency.
That's right. That's the gig you wanted in a cabinet to get to the next level. Secretary of State. That was typically, that would break, and Jackson kind of broke that because poor Henry Clay, who will be part of the story as well. But so they finally settle on this guy, John Tyler from Virginia. He's from outside of Williamsburg today, Williamsburg, Virginia. Enslaver. He was a senator from Virginia. Old school. Thomas Jefferson was his hero. He was a supporter of Jackson, but broke with Jackson after the nullification issue. And he was a states writer. He was a strict constructionist of the Constitution, and the Whigs believed he would balance out the ticket.
Yeah, right. He'd get those Virginia votes. Everybody'd be happy.
But, there was this great diarist. This is the age of the great diarist. I've talked to you about the great diarist that John Quincy Adams was. There was another diarist, a man named Philip Hone, who was a former mayor of New York City, who wrote of Tippecanoe and Tyler too. There was rhyme, but no reason.
Oh, the age of wit.
But what's it matter? What's it matter? Like, I mean, Henry Clay in the Senate, he was kind of the leader of the Whigs, even though he wasn't going to be president. And Clay thought that whatever he wanted to do, and the big thing he wanted to do was establish the third bank of the United States. Once William Henry Harrison took office, it was going to be easy peasy, lemon squeezy.
There's a lot of noise out there about hair loss, a lot of different treatment options. There are these 10-in-1 shampoos. You get a lot of advice from ding-a-lings. You can go to expensive clinic visits. You can fly to Turkey, from what I understand, and spend a lot of time and money. But you know what cuts through all of it? With real trusted treatments and a 100% online process? Hims. You've got better things to do than sit in a doctor's office talking about your hairline. You certainly have better things to do than fly to Turkey and spend a month there where you can't even roll over on your pillow. That's why Hims offers access to expert-backed hair loss treatments entirely online. They have doctor-trusted ingredients like finasteride and minoxidil. They can stop further hair loss and regrow hair in as little as 3 to 6 months. You shouldn't have to go out of your way to feel like yourself. You shouldn't have to struggle to make an appointment. You shouldn't have to be confused about your options. You can find the right hair regrowth treatment for you with flexible subscription options, access to 24/7 provider support, and once-a-day treatment options that fit your daily routine. So for simple online access to personalized and affordable care for hair loss, ED, weight loss, and more, visit hims.com/omnibus. Make sure you put that /omnibus in there when you go to hims.com. That's hims.com/omnibus for your free online visit. Check it out. hims.com/omnibus. Featured products include compounded drug products, which the FDA does not approve or verify for safety, effectiveness, or quality. Prescription required. See website for full details, restrictions, and important safety information. Individual results may vary based on studies of topical and oral minoxidil and finasteride. Look, nobody likes a disruptor more than I do. No one likes a scrappy startup that's going to disrupt the economic space where the big boys are playing and they think they have a monopoly on things. And what place is more obnoxious than the wireless space, where wireless phone companies really do act like they have a complete monopoly on it, and we're just going to pay what they charge, and they're going to entice us with their dumb specials. I went in the other day to a wireless store, and the kid was trying to upsell me, and I was like, look, I'm not here to buy anything. I just want this, modification to my service. And he just was relentless. Like, oh, well, today is a special deal. And what about this? What about that? And I was like, man, you're really getting on it. And I understand why you're pressured to do this by your employer, but this is lame. And, I'm traditionally like, you feel over a barrel. You have to accept it because that's how it's always been. But you know what? Mint Mobile exists strictly and purely to fix this exact problem. Mint Mobile is here to rescue me and you with premium wireless plans that start at just $15 a month. All plans come with high-speed data and unlimited talk and text delivered on the nation's largest 5G network. You can bring your own phone and your own phone number, activate with an eSIM in minutes, and start saving immediately. No long-term contracts and no hassle. No kids sitting at the counter trying to upsell you on some of his things that you're never going to want or need. You can ditch overpriced wireless and get 3 months of premium wireless service from Mint Mobile for just $15 a month. That's $15 a month. If you like your money, Mint Mobile is for you. Shop plans at mintmobile.com/omnibus. That's mintmobile.com/omnibus. mint.com/omnibus. Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month 5 gigabyte plan required. That's equivalent to $15 a month. New customer offer for first 3 months only, then full price plan options available. Taxes and fees extra. See Mint Mobile for details. I'm telling you, look into this and calculate how much you could be saving by using Mint Mobile. I guarantee you'll switch. One of the things your book really illustrates is how much the question of slavery was never on the back of anyone's mind. It was right at the front of everybody's mind. It was the argument behind the argument for almost everything. Mm-hmm. And, you know, your book kind of spells it out that the Civil War is this 60-year-long process of leading up to violence where everybody's just more or less concluding, well, there's no way that we're going to resolve this except we're going to have to shoot it out, and let's not do that today. Let's kick the can down the road. Yeah,
what happens in 1860, and I'm trying to think of the historian who said it. And it wasn't me who first said this. But the reason why we had the Civil War was because our American system of government could no longer process the dispute. Like, we got to the point where politics just kind of couldn't. There was no more compromises to be had, and the system just could not work it out. The system couldn't work it out, and ultimately that's what led to the system broke down, and that's why we had the war.
But so Henry Clay is here. He wants a third Bank of the United States.
He wants to be president, really. But in lieu of that, he wants a third Bank of the United States because he feels like it's going to kind of get the economy back on track to centralize the economic life of the American government. And so the election plays out, and Van Buren was very unpopular. Like we saw with Joe Biden, you can't really win. It's hard to win an election when the economy, kitchen table issues, we say.
Yeah.
And so Harrison wins, and the Whigs are in power, and they have the House, and they have the Senate, and now they have the presidency. They are going to it is going to be a turning of the tide from the last 12 years of Southern presidential reign of the Democrats, right? But history has other plans. And so it's the inauguration day, and William Henry Harrison, he's the oldest man ever elected president, and he's kind of self-conscious about that. And, you know, it's a cold day in Washington, D.C. It's March 4th, you know, they did it all, but you know how March can be in the Northeast. And so Harrison, he doesn't wear a coat. He doesn't wear a hat. He marches in the parade, gives one of the longest speeches in history at this point, and he gets a cold, and he gets pneumonia. 31 days later, he's dead.
Do you really feel, I know this is one of the great stories of the United States, but I mean, not, or one of the terrible stories, but do you really think it was that he didn't wear a hat?
He caught a cold. I mean, he got sick. You know, we can do another episode where we talk about what medical experts think happened to him. He was an older man. I mean, who knows? But the lure of as much as there is lore in American history is that he got pneumonia.
He was a Western tough guy. He was a cowboy.
He got sick. He got sick and died. And there was rhyme in Tippecanoe and Tyler too, but there was no reason to it, as Philip Hone said. And never before in the nation's history had Article 2 of the Constitution, Clause 6, in case of the removal of the president from office or of his death, resignation, or inability to discharge the powers and duties of the said office, the same shall devolve on the vice president. And the Congress may by law provide for the case of removal, death, resignation, or inability both of the president and the vice president, declaring what officer shall then act as president, and such officer shall act accordingly until the disability be removed or a president shall be elected. So they knew at the time that, at least in the short term, the vice president, John Tyler, would be the acting president.
Now, as somebody who's studied the Constitution a little bit, is there any, you would think, given the power of the Congress and the institutional power that is in the Constitution, that a new president would be in the power of the Congress? Wouldn't that be the case in a lot of parliamentary countries where it would be the Congress that would choose, and not just that there would be this person in an ineffectual job that was picked to balance the ticket that would just ascend to it?
Yeah, you would think, and a lot did. In fact, John Quincy Adams was not so convinced from his seat in the House of Representatives at the time. He called Tyler a man with talents not above mediocrity, and a spirit incapable of expansion to the dimension of the station upon which he has been cast by the hand of Providence.
Oof.
That is not a vote of confidence.
No.
But Tyler, he was bold, and he claimed full presidential powers. And when people would send him mail that said addressed to acting President Tyler, which they did, he refused to open it.
Wow. Acting president. Yeah, right. That would be your instinct at first.
Acting president.
Until we pick a real president.
But he said, no, I am the president. And in fact, he maintained Harrison's cabinet.
Huh. Which would have been a Whig cabinet and one that he had no common ground?
No common ground, and they were loyal to who now that Harrison was dead? They were loyal to Henry Clay.
Right.
So he's claiming full power, and he's got a cabinet not only of rivals, but we can say cabinet of enemies.
Uh-huh.
And Henry Clay, we know Clay is the great compromiser today, and he was previously the Speaker of the House and Secretary of State. He was now a senator from Kentucky, leader of the Whig Party, and he was ready to move forward with the bills that would institute the Third Bank of the United States.
Which was a job that he just had to appeal to the Congress, but is he he's in a position to, as a member of the Senate, in a position to put this bill forward, isn't he?
Oh, he is, and he does, and it passes. It passes the House, it passes the Senate. Tyler vetoes it. He vetoed two bills to resurrect the Bank of the United States, which was the key. Like, imagine if Obama vetoed Obamacare. This is the signature legislation of this Congress, of this Whig Party. And Tyler considered the federal bank unconstitutional because he was a strict constitutionalist.
No good has ever come out of those words.
No. And so what do you think happens after he vetoes these bills?
Well, God, if you veto something twice, can Congress keep putting it on your desk?
Well, I guess you need to rework the bill, and re-vote once it's vetoed.
Right. But I guess
I don't know the procedure for resubmitting a vetoed legislation. I'm sure someone out there listening knows.
But the cabinet, what was the makeup of the cabinet at the time? I know now we have a lot of cabinet positions that weren't there in 1840. What are the cabinet?
Well, so you have Secretary of State, and this was Daniel Webster. And Webster was a supporter of the bank, but he was also negotiating with Britain at this point as Secretary of State. So he's Tyler, Secretary of State, and he's deep in the middle of negotiations over what becomes the Webster-Ashburton Treaty with Britain, which resolves the Maine Canada border dispute. There's a border dispute that's been ongoing for decades between the state of Maine and Canada, and Webster feels like he's really close to getting this worked out. So he didn't like all this chaos. But so Daniel Webster, which is he was one of the lions of the Senate at this, one of the greatest orators. He left the Senate to be Secretary of State under Harrison, initially thinking he was in the seat, which would be the stepping stone to his presidency in 1844 or 1848.
You know, we still say 54-40 or fight up here in Washington.
Yeah.
Because I feel like we were we were denied a lot of our rightful territory up there in BC, but
yeah, I think Adams agreed with you, but he was okay for the compromise as well.
Right.
And then there was a Secretary of War, which has become popular again.
Yes.
John Bell was Secretary of War. Secretary of the Navy, George Badger. Attorney General John Crittenden. And the Postmaster General was in the cabinet, Francis Granger from New York, I believe. See, these were all Clay loyalists at this point, rather than Tyler loyalists. And so on September 11th, 1841, after Tyler vetoed those bills, they all quit.
The cabinet resigned.
Everybody but Webster, because Webster really felt like he was close to nailing down this treaty, and he thought it would catapult him to the presidency at some point.
Well, this is a question I've often sort of wondered. How does resigning from an office like that, I mean, it makes a political point for 1 hour, but what it really does is free up the seat.
Right, yeah.
I mean, so the political point is kind of, I mean, I can't imagine if I were President Tyler that I wouldn't rejoice in the cabinet all resigning. Just get out of my way.
Well, so it was coupled with another action. The Whig Party kicked Tyler out of the party.
Huh.
So they kicked him out of the party.
But he's not a Democrat. So
no, he's not a Democrat. He was our first and maybe only independent president. At this point, he becomes an independent president. And so in one day, Tyler loses 5 cabinet members. He is soon kicked out of his party, but he's still president. And he restacks his cabinet, hopefully with people that are a little more loyal than the people who just left.
Right, and he's grabbing those people from the political class, but is he looking for Western nonconformists, or is he looking for some established characters?
Well, for example, Thomas Gilmer is the Secretary of the Navy. He's a Southerner. He's from Virginia. He's a states writer, so he's leaning closer to his Tyler's personal men who share Tyler's ideologies. Abel Upshur becomes his Secretary of State. I thought Webster stayed around. After the ratification of the Webster-Ashburton Treaty, Webster too leaves the cabinet. Oh, voluntarily. He quits. He quits. Yeah. He's had enough. He got what he wanted. He's done. Right, but that's too bad. He probably imagined he was in line to be the president when he got the job. Yeah, but I think he thinks he served as Secretary of State for 2 years. He left in 1843, and he accomplished something that he could run on. And look, people called Tyler his accidency. He had no party. Right. He had no party. And he has, I don't know if he has the record for the most vetoes, but he vetoed a lot of legislation because that was his power. That was the power he had. And he used the veto, up to his point more than anybody else did. Right. Total chaos agent, as we were saying. He was so unpopular that he was burned in effigy in the country. And I think he's the first president to be burned in effigy. And then people would throw things at the White House. I read a few accounts of people were throwing things to the White House, and him handing out rifles to protect, in case they got attacked. And some say he started the Secret Service because he had to hire his own guard. And that was the first time a president had a guard, because people could just walk into the White House back then.
Right.
They called it the president's house. Until Teddy Roosevelt. Time goes on, he restacks his cabinet. And, but the terror, and the doom, the cabinet of doom continues. There's more to the cabinet of doom than people walking out of the cabinet.
Uh-huh.
Some people left the cabinet, but they didn't walk out.
What, they went out boots first?
Well, so there's a moment here in 1844 when the United States is created, the Navy is growing more powerful. There's Commodore Robert Stockton, who was a great naval mind, and he, along with a Swiss engineer, the last name of Ericsson, create this, like, the most technologically advanced American naval vessel. It's the USS Princeton. It's the first ship with screw propellers that could break through ice. There's an engine mounted below the waterline to protect from enemy fire. Mm-hmm. And it was armed with a massive 12-inch, 27,000-pound wrought iron cannon that they called the Peacemaker.
Is wrought iron the material that we make guns out of?
I don't know. I don't know.
So.
I am not a gunsmith, but
okay.
This ship, this vessel is state of the art technology. And Tyler was so proud of it that he throws a party on the Potomac and invites 400 of his closest friends to sail down the Potomac on the USS Princeton.
Uh-huh.
And the guests on this voyage included multiple cabinet members. The Secretary of the Navy, Gilmer, was there, and the Secretary of State at the time, Abel Upshur, now the second Secretary of State. Former First Lady Dolly Madison was on this ship, and there were like a half dozen senators, and there was a wealthy businessman from New York City named David Gardner. And he had two daughters. His two daughters were with him. He had two daughters, including the 24-year-old Julie Gardner, whom the 54-year-old widowed Tyler was actively courting.
Oh. When did Tyler's wife die? Was he also the first widowed president?
That's a good question. I feel like widowing was not unusual back in those days.
Maybe more common.
But so he's 54 and he's courting this 24-year-old, heiress to a New York, wealthy New Yorker. And they're all on board for the ship, as well as his son. His son's on board as well, John. And so they're going down the Potomac, and Commodore Stockton says, we're going to do a demonstration of the gun. And they fire the gun twice. And everybody's cheering on deck, and it's this wonderful moment. And then they go downstairs, and they're drinking, they're eating, they're partying, they're singing songs. They're having a really good time, and people are getting drunk.
Uh-huh. I've been going through my closet trying to weed out all the stuff that isn't like pretty good quality, and it's become something of a sort of obsession, a little bit of a time sink, sorting through all of my clothes, trying to really, really prune them down and rethink what I keep around, keep fewer things, but better things. And these are not just like good labels, but I'm talking about pieces that are well made, easy to wear all the time. And I've recently been introduced to Quince, which sells a vast assortment of clothes and and accessories, where the quality, the fabrics just feel kind of elevated, thoughtful fits, and this online model of pricing that is kind of stunning for the quality of the pieces you get for this kind of money. Quince makes high-quality everyday essentials. They use European linen, a kind of insanely soft flow knit activewear fabric. They have men's linen pants or shirts that are lightweight, breathable, and comfortable. Basically, summer is on its way, and these are perfect both layered and individually. The pants are laid back but also refined. They look good together without trying too hard. That's the other thing I really noticed about Quince. You could go on and order kind of from any different collection of menswear, and at least in my experience, it all kind of goes together in a really sort of chic way, a way that's a little bit even like aspirational for me to be that chic. Of course, their flow knit activewear is moisture wicking. It's actually like hella soft. I got some of this stuff, and I've been wearing it to the gym, the flow knit stuff. The best part is that their prices are 50 to 60% less than similar brands because Quince works directly with ethical factories and cuts out the middlemen. So you're paying for the quality, not the brand markup. And like I say, everything is both designed to last, and it makes getting dressed in a cool, chic way easy. Refresh your wardrobe with Quince. Go to quince.com/omnibus. That's Quince, QUINCE.com/omnibus for free shipping and 365-day returns. It's now available in Canada, too. That's quince.com/omnibus for free shipping and 365-day free returns. QUINCE.com/omnibus. Thanks, Quince.
And at one point, they are sailing down the Potomac and they pass Mount Vernon.
Oh, sure.
And of course, some drunken fool says, "We need to fire the gun in honor of George Washington." And Stockton's like, "No, enough gunfiring for the day." But he keeps going on. "Oh, come on, man." You know, the old, "Oh, come on, man. Let's fire the gun." So Stockton accedes, and several people go up on deck to fire the gun, but not the president. The president is down below with Julia and his son, who is, well, the one account I read of this is he's actually, they're downstairs, they're giving toasts, and he's about to go upstairs. The president's about to go on deck for the firing in front of Mount Vernon. I guess he feels like he should be there.
Sure.
When his son starts to sing, and he stops and goes back downstairs to listen to his son sing. Well, downstairs the party is going on and it's getting rowdy. Upstairs they're about to fire this gun. But all of a sudden, the people downstairs, they hear the firing of the gun, like a loud, really loud blast. And everybody cheers until they start to hear the screams.
Uh-oh.
And the gun misfired.
Uh-oh.
And when it misfired, it killed the Secretary of the State. It killed the Secretary of State, Abel Upshur. It killed it killed Thomas Gilmer, the Secretary of the Navy. It killed a former diplomat named Virgil Maxey. It killed Commodore Beverly Kennan, Chief of Navy Bureau of Construction. It killed 2 sailors and one of Tyler's personal African-American servants.
The gun just exploded on the deck.
The gun misfires and explodes on deck.
Wow.
Killing 8 people. The 8th man killed is David Gardner.
Oh, the rich New Yorker.
The rich New Yorker. It is at the time the single deadliest tragedy to befall the United States government. You know, a tragedy like this. There are many church services in the days which follow. There's a national mourning. I think it's like one of our first periods of national mourning.
Are there rules now that keep multiple members of the cabinet from traveling together, or is that just that the president and the vice president and the secretary of state can't?
Well, we see it happen, though, don't we? Don't we see the president out somewhere and the secretary of state's there? And there's, you know, I know the night of the State of the Union address, there's always like a shadow government, right? There's the designated survivor, which is, you know, been made into television series and stuff. But yes, this was just a unfathomable tragedy, and Tyler has to replace some more cabinet members. He's got to fill his cabinet again, and when he does it, he selects John C. Calhoun from South Carolina, the chief nullifier, to be his new Secretary of State. And what does Calhoun do? Calhoun and Tyler together, they annex Texas. They finally bring Texas into the Union. And it was something that was so hotly debated in the country, and there were so many people in the North against it for fear of expanding the slaveocracy through the South, maybe carving Texas into 5 new slave states and tipping the balance of Southerners to Northerners in the Senate. But Calhoun finally is the one, and with Tyler, and Tyler knows he's not going to be reelected. He's not going to be renominated. No, he doesn't have a party. He can't be renominated. He knows his time in the presidency, his days are numbered. And so Calhoun and Tyler together, on the last day of Tyler's presidency, they finally annex Texas into the United States.
Now, when you talk about Calhoun, he is this really interesting character. He figures prominently in your book as initially a pretty reasonable politician who was sort of even like a comrade of John Quincy Adams, like somebody who felt like he was principled. And then as time went on, he became more and more of a political player and set himself up as a real booster of sort of states' rights, Southernism, I guess, or as the slaveocracy, as John Quincy would say.
Yeah, Calhoun was a nationalist. He served in Monroe's cabinet alongside of John Quincy Adams, and he was the Secretary of War in Monroe's cabinet, and he was a nationalist. He believed in a strong federal government, but he becomes a nullifier, and he becomes the architect, actually, of nullification. And when that standoff happens between Andrew Jackson and South Carolina, Calhoun is Jackson's vice president. So it's a standoff between the president and the vice president. And Calhoun leaves the cabinet after that, and he becomes senator from South Carolina, where he stays, but he briefly becomes Tyler's Secretary of State. And then after Tyler's administration, he goes back into the Senate for South Carolina. They were holding his seat for him.
Well, so annexing Texas as a slave state does seem like a thing that's been kind of percolating in the American story ever since the Alamo.
Mm-hmm.
But wasn't also California and the Oregon Territory? I mean, weren't these also potential inductees? I know, when Missouri came in, we also brought Maine in, and there was this sense of balancing.
That was the compromise. Yes, yeah. You had to balance. Yeah.
Wasn't there a balancing state for the North?
Not for Texas, no.
Oh, boy.
Not for Texas, and that's what made it all so dangerous. And it was, God, I hope I'm right on that editorial note. I hope I'm right on that. the challenge became, and this is 1844 now, and then, we're going to have war with Mexico in the next administration, Polk, and there'll be all this new land coming into the country. And every time a debate would come up, is this land slave or is this land free, that the nation was always in jeopardy. Every time that debate came up, because it was such a fraught debate with really no real resolution ever. It was always just one compromise after another.
Right.
And that would ultimately end. But, there's a footnote. There's a really interesting footnote to the John Tyler story, if I may.
Go.
That tragic day in 1844, February 28th, of that when the Princeton explodes on the Potomac, Tyler literally carries Julia Gardner off of the boat. She's faint. Her father has died. She's inconsolable. She fainted. They quickly wed. And I do believe it's the first wedding in the White House.
I looked it up. The first widower in the White House was Thomas Jefferson, of course.
He was
widowed long before. Sense. Yeah. But so he's now, this 55-year-old president has now taken a 25-year-old bereaved wife.
Yes. And he ultimately has 15 children.
Whoa.
Several with her. Into his 70s, he's making babies. And do you know that his son, John Lyon Tyler, would do the same, have a child in his 70s. And John Tyler we spent the last hour talking about, his youngest grandson just died last year at 96 years old.
Isn't that incredible? He's just 2 kisses away from the founders, really. I mean, when was Tyler born?
That's right. Tyler was born in 1790, I think.
Wow.
Thereabouts.
Wow.
Pretty sure.
And so just to wrap up, why didn't Texas get split up into 5 slave states? What kept it from doing that? It does seem logical, particularly as the South was asserting itself during this period, that there would have been a lot of movement to say, and even geographically, Eastern Texas and Western Texas aren't really, they don't really belong together.
Yeah, North and South Jersey. The honest answer I have for you is I don't know.
Yeah.
But by the early 1850s, we're talking about Cuba, about taking Cuba. That becomes popular. That, by the way, Thomas Jefferson wanted Cuba. That's something that, and then in 1852, I guess James Buchanan is Minister to Britain under Franklin Pierce, and he's trying to get Cuba with some underhanded, and they have these filibusterers who are going in and trying to cause independence revolutions in different countries, and so the bigger talk in the 1850s for Southerners especially was how do we expand slavery? We get Cuba.
Oh, sure, because it's much more native to slave plantations than Texas would be.
Yeah, it was turnkey for them. Yes.
Yeah, right. Well, and they seem anxious to have wars with Mexico, and then ultimately they're going to have a war with Spain. It's surprising that maybe they didn't want to take on Spain in the 1850s. Spain was too great a power still. Probably.
And then the Civil War kind of ended all of that and all that talk, at least for a time. And then Teddy Roosevelt, he brings it back.
Teddy Roosevelt figured into this story a couple of times, which is interesting. I wouldn't have expected. But the 19th century is just one administration of chaos after another.
Oh, yeah, big time. Yeah. And when you think about the chaos of the Tyler administration, he wasn't supposed to be president. And I think about this, I'm who else wasn't supposed to be president? Andrew Johnson wasn't supposed to be president. He was another for the for Lincoln's party, for the Republican Party. He was another compromise candidate, a man who was from the South and would balance out Abraham Lincoln and hopefully, secure his reelection, which Lincoln did win reelection, but then Lincoln dies, and Johnson was an about face from all that Lincoln was working towards and working for, and so you would think that a lot of those Republicans of the Lincoln Party were ex-Whigs, and you would think they would remember, the mistakes of the past. But like the grim math of the Tyler administration, 5 cabinet resignations in one day, 2 cabinet secretaries killed in one afternoon, 4 different secretaries of state, and a president without a party. So the man that Adams called a mediocrity kind of outlasted them all and had the last laugh. And to put the cherry on top of this cabinet of doom cake that we've baked, Tyler's the only president to die under a foreign flag, because in 1861 he goes to the Confederacy.
Oh,
he renounces his American citizenship and he becomes a Confederate, and he dies under the stars and bars.
I've been to his grave in Richmond. He's buried in Richmond.
Well, he was not buried in the United States at the time.
Whoa.
Or what he thought was the United States.
Whoa, now it all comes back together. It gives us pause. I know you and I both are people with a lot of faith in some of these institutions that we've watched be rocked many times over the 250 years of the United States. And yet it still seems like the Constitution holds fast and the experiment trundles on.
Still going on.
Yeah.
Still going on. Yeah. Same as it ever was, as they say.
Well, thank you very much, Bob, for coming on the show. It's been a real pleasure, and thanks for taking the time out. I know you've got other things to do. You're going to pick up your bass again pretty soon.
Yeah, in a couple hours. I can't believe it. It's been weeks.
Yeah, that's right. Well, and the thing about, as we know about bass players, you have almost no memory or sense at all. So you're going to pick up the bass and be like,
that's right.
Never
like
seen this
new.
before.
It's always new. It's always new.
Well, that concludes Cabinet of Doom, entry 171.JE0814, certificate number 34343 in the omnibus. Futurelings, you know how we feel about social media, that it is a scourge upon the land, but within that, we encourage you to watch this show on YouTube at youtube.com/@theomnibusproject. You can hang out with other futurelings and other fans of the show, and now I'm assuming with the legion of Avett Brothers fans that are going to flood all of our social media spaces at Omnibus Project. You simply Google the word futurelings and you'll find Reddit communities, Discord, all the other places. You can email us at theomnibusproject@gmail.com, and we will consider your emails on our addenda program that's available on our Patreon, patreon.com/omnibusproject. If you have corrections, we will consider them, and if you have praise, we'll read it aloud in slow, melodious tones. Please visit our website at omnibusproject.com, and you can submit a proposal to co-host the Omnibus at omnibusproject.com/submit. And finally, send us physical mail. Care of the Omnibus Project, 609 Southwest 150th Street, number 48084, Burien, Washington, 98166-9998.
Futurelings, from our vantage point in your distant past, we have no idea how long our civilization survived. We hope and pray that the catastrophe we fear may never come. If the worst comes soon, this recording, like all of our recordings, may have been our final word. But if Providence allows, we wish you many goods and cheese and hope to be back with you soon for another entry in the omnibus.